Welcome back to part 4, CSC230, to our ex4 CSS practice that we're working on. And I stopped at the end of the last video because I had some kind of error, and it was obviously something very easy that I overlooked. I didn't have my dot in the class name. You were probably looking at that and saying, just put the dot. You're probably screaming at the screen. So I need the dot there. That's what I didn't have. So let me go back, and maybe I don't need section here. I'm going to take section out, because I was thinking that might have been the problem. But let me take that out and see if I could just put section, that, and make sure I have the dot for column 3. Because remember, class name needs a dot. If it was an ID, it would need a pound sign. But it's a class name, so it uses a dot, not a comma, a dot. And let me run that. Let me refresh here, and that should fix that. And that looks okay. And I notice I don't have to put section in front of that, so that's fine. So that looks okay. I didn't change any of the fonts yet. Let's just finish up the footer here. I'll give it a background color. So I'll target footer, give it a background color. We're going to leave it 100% so we don't have to do anything. We don't have to give it a width. You can put width 100%, but it's automatically going to be 100%. And I'll put background color. And what I'm going to do is copy the background color from the nav. You might say, well, you want it light blue, or at least you had it light blue. Well, that's okay. I'm going to copy it here and make it light blue. And then when I hover over here, I actually want to stay in the same family. So if I hover here, I'm just going to kind of move it over there. And that should be in the same family. And it looks a little grayish. We'll see how it looks. I'll go here. I'll run it. That's not nice at all. I must have messed up when I was doing that. Let me go in here again. And I'll go up here, make it nice and bright up there. It's getting cut off. I should go down a little bit. And then go again. Again, click off, hover over, and then go up here. That looks okay. And I'll run it. See, if I make my screen smaller, you just get an hour there to run it. And I'll go here. And there it is. And I'll put some padding on it, so it has padding like that. Whatever. I think that was 0.5 all around I had. So on the other one, on the nav one. So I'll do padding. And remember, when you just put padding, it's on all sides. So I'll do 0.5 EM, which is probably 8 pixels around. So I'll run it, I'll refresh it, and that's fine. So we're almost there in terms of what we're doing. Again, we didn't do anything really great. If you look at this, my earlier sample, I didn't do anything fantastic. This might be a little bigger or a different font. We can adjust some of the fonts. And I don't know if I'm going to do this right now because these videos are getting a little long. I may target these headlines here and put them in a sans serif font. I actually may target everything and put it in a sans serif font and then just leave this in a serif font. Actually, that may be better. So that's what I plan to do. So I'm going to go back to Replit, and I'm going to go up to the top, and I'll even put it in my global. And now this isn't global. It's not a global reset, but so maybe I'll put it in here. But I'll put body because I'll target everything in body, because that's everything. And I'll just put font family. And when you do font family, if you go back and you click on the colon, it gives you some font families here. Now I'm going to use, now they're not always the combinations that you want. I like the one down here that's Verdania, Geneva, and Tahoma. And you could put them in yourself. Notice if they have multiple names, like Gil Sans, you have to put a comma around them. You could just use Arial. Again, we're just using, you know, basic default fonts, but I'm going to choose this one. And instead of Geneva, maybe I'll do Calibri, because that's like an office font, and I like Calibri. And I'll get rid of Geneva. That's a Mac font. We don't need that. Calibri, Verdania, Tahoma, and then sans serif. We'll put a semicolon here. That's everything is going to be in that. So if I run this and I refresh, everything will probably look a little bigger, and that looks pretty nice. It looks cleaner. I think sans serif fonts look better on screen. I'm going to change my banner heading and make it Georgia, so that I can just find my header 1 and just go in here and put font family. And if you backspace and put the colon, it'll give you a list here, and I'm going to find the one that has Georgia, and I'll just use that one. And you could even throw Cambria in there, but everybody should have Georgia. That's a pretty common font, so Georgia will be first. And if it's an H1, it'll automatically be bold, so you shouldn't have to change that. And if I need it bigger, I can make it 400% or something. So let's see how that looks. That should only target the H1 in the header. The other ones shouldn't be affected. So let's refresh. That looks better. If you want to make it bigger, you can go a little bigger. I'll target that H1, header H1. Maybe I'll make it 400. If it's gigantic, I'll go in between. There, that's fine. And these things look a little small. Matter of fact, everything looks a little small. And if everything's a little small, you could go into body and put font size and just kick it up to like 110 and put a semicolon. That'll kind of upgrade everything a little bit. That looks a little bit better. And even the headings maybe a little big now, but that's okay. I'll leave it like that. And these things, I guess, are okay. I could spread them out a little bit more if I want. And I could give column headings different. I could give these different fonts if I want to. A lot of different things I could do here. I could put space under these. Let's say I wanted a little more space underneath the heading. Even though a heading looks good on top of a paragraph, what if we want a little line spacing in the paragraphs? What if we want a little space underneath the column? Well, we could do that. We just got to find the column heading. Now we'd have to find section, call, and then the H1 inside there. I'll just put section because that's what we're talking about, and then call. And that's talking about all of them. And that means I should probably put it here. I'm going to put it under here because it's the H1. And I'm putting H1. So it's the H1 inside of the section call. And what did I say I was going to do? I was going to put a little padding after, or padding below, or padding bottom as it's really called, or is padding bottom. I'll put padding bottom, and I'll just put like 6 pixels. I'll put an amount like that, 6 pixels below. That's like space below. And I think the size of it is fine. If you wanted to change the font, anything else, I think that's okay for now. And I also wanted to change call the line height, which is like leading, like the line spacing. So all these columns that are inside section, I'll do them all the same. I'll just do line height, and I'll do like 150%. That may be too much, but we'll see how it looks from there. And I'll refresh. So now the line height spread out, and there's a little space after these. Now the only problem we have is if we make this small, like on a phone or something, it gets like that. These columns get real narrow. So we're going to fix that. We're going to use something called media queries to do that. Now that's responsive design. That's almost a whole different thing. But since we're working on this, we'll do one more video. We'll do in the queries. I won't do a whole lot with it because we're going to keep doing responsive. But basically the way it works is you kind of measure where it's at. And when you line it up at a certain place, I think you have to do this. I'll say inspect. And I'm not really doing anything down here, but what I'm doing is, you see I'm looking at these, see those numbers up at the upper right there? I'm getting, and I'm going to move this down because I want to see my columns. But I want to see this thing, this line there when I'm moving it. And I want to see about when I want to break. So if they're getting real narrow, I think I did it around 800. And you could make it 760 or something. You know, maybe you want to get to there. Actually, I think 700 is good. So I don't want it, here's 700, and I think that's as tight as I'd want to be for 3 columns. And then after that, I want it to go to 2 columns, and then after that, I want it to be just kind of stacked on top of each other. So that's what we're going to do with responsive web design. And I don't think I'm going to do anything with these buttons right now. We'll do something later, unless we have more time to do that. But because it's bringing in a lot of little details of the padding and stuff, and I know these videos are getting long, and we're just doing CSS practice, so I don't want to get too deep into this, but we can, under the hover part, we can actually change the background color, and that's how those buttons kind of work. And actually, I might spread these out a little bit if I go back and I find those nav things. I had padding 0.5 M. Let's see if I just make it 1, it's probably fine. I'll run it. And I'll refresh it. Now they look a little better. They're separated a little more. But like I said, we could make the background color change and make them look more like buttons. But for now, that's okay. I don't think I want to do that for now because I don't want to get involved in too many details. You know, column, we could certainly change the color of that. But again, we're just using this as practice. So I don't want to get too involved with it, but we are going to do media queries. So I think that's the next thing we're going to do. So I think what I'll do is I'll break the video here, since the one before got really long. So we'll give you a short video for part 4. And then for part 5, we'll just do the media queries, and then you'll be done. And remember, when you're done, all you have to do is just highlight this thing and copy the link and put it in your comment, and just insert a link and put it in there, because I'll find your name. I'll be able to find your Repel account by using your username in there. So it doesn't even matter what you have there. It doesn't matter if it's the index page or whatever. I'll be able to get in and do that. But we got a lot of styles going on here, and we're learning about classes and learning about classes inside of other elements, and multiple, we're using multiple classes. So we got a lot going on here for just a real simple page. And now we're going to throw in some responsive web design, meaning we're just going to change it in breakpoints. And we already have part of it because this was built into our index. We already have something that's going to help us up here, this with device width. This helps our scaling when we do that. But what we're going to do is something called media queries, and we're going to put them at the end of our CSS, at the end of everything. And basically they're kind of styles inside of queries that run. It's like a condition, like a certain condition, like if the size of the page is less than this, do this. And then if it's less than this, do that. So once the window gets to 700, we're going to do something. And then once the window gets to whatever. And if you want to see the widths here, just right click and do inspect. And like I said, we might go to like 750 or something, and then make it 2 columns. And then once it gets to below like 600, probably, I think once it's below 600, that's what I did last time, or 580, maybe 580 will be fine. Maybe 680 and 580 we'll use. And then it'll break just to 1 column. So then we'll put new CSS. So then we got to take away the floats and things like that. So that's a little bit of introduction to responsive design that we'll do in part 5. So for right now, this is pretty good. As far as learning a little bit about CSS and the way some things work, enough to get us confused. So there's enough to kind of screw things up and mess things up here. CSS, even though it's, it's not programming, but there's a lot to deal with, and there's a lot of things that conflict with each other. There's a lot of things to know what's inside of what, and what kind of element you're targeting, and what takes precedence. So there's a lot of issues with CSS. It takes a lot of time to get used to CSS. If you've worked with CSS before, you've probably worked a lot with it, because it's not the easiest thing in the world to use. But anyway, that's what we're going to do next. We're going to do the responsive media queries in part 5.